Hello, hello. I'm live again. Boy, I'm going to have to get used to these regular Facebook lives, but I am excited to see that there are some others of you that are going to be joining me today, and I'm excited about the topic of functional education. Now, I did put this down as a 30-minute dealio, but I have some great questions as well, so I may go a little bit longer, and of course, if it's too long, then you can always come back and catch the replay at a later date. And if you have questions during this, please feel free to post them in the comments section. I see that my awesome mom assistant, Sheila, has joined, and she will be helping with posting any links and answering questions or making sure that I get to them as well. So I want to go ahead and dive in to what is functional education, what is unschooling, and what is it about this, me feeling like everybody needs to have functional education. So, hey Holly, I see you're in here as well. I am going to be going back and forth from a few notes because I wanted to make sure that I could cover everything here. So functional education, if you are familiar with functional medicine is that medical practice or treatment where it focuses on optimal functioning of the body and its organs. So it's usually involving systems of holistic and alternative medicine. Essentially, functional medicine is all about how things are this mind, body, soul approach that you look at everything. If you have an ailment, if you have a back pain, it's not just in your back, but how is it related to everything else in your body and all of your nerve systems? And then how is it related to what's going on in your environment and with your emotions and everything else? Well, functional education, I want you to take that same concept. Functional education is a very broad term. It very much complements the concept of unschooling, which is what we personally do. But beyond that, what I believe functional education is this is taking the parameters around what learning can be. It's taking it outside of a four-walled classroom. It's taking it beyond subjects and grades and testing and keeping up with the Joneses as far as where everybody is with developmental checkpoints and all of these different things. Functional education is being wide open to the concept of lifelong learning and being open to that coming in many different forms and shapes. And I feel so strongly about this that I have done the Mama Says Namaste podcast, season 5. We are focused just on this topic of functional education. So every week, Nathan and I are diving deep into this concept. We are on, I think it's the 3rd or 4th week so far. And I have to say, today is the day that the podcasts go up. I am behind schedule. It will go out today, and this week's one is really, really jam-packed full of some great information. So if you want to dig deeper beyond what we can cover even in this, the podcast is a great way to go through the acronym that I'm going to be laying out here. So what we have is, like I said, with functional education, in order for me to make it somewhat easy for us to remember, I'm going to break it down to the acronym function. And that way we can kind of cover what I feel are some of the key essentials to understanding this concept. So first off, when people ask when I started homeschooling or unschooling, I simply reply, in the womb. I believe that there is not a specific start to when you start learning. I mean, you think about that and how much our brains are developing even in the womb. And from the instant a baby is born, they are looking all around them and they're seeing an opportunity to learn everywhere. And for all of you who have followed me for a while, when I ask my children, where do you go to school? Everywhere. Who's your teacher? Everyone. So that concept is something that I enforce from the very beginning. And a lot of times when parents are debating on unschooling or homeschooling or any form of alternative education, that first feeling is that intimidation of, well, I can't teach my kid. And I have to say, mamas and daddies, like it or not, you are teaching your children every single day. They are watching you as their very first example of the way to function in the world. They get their lessons from you on a minute by minute basis constantly. So let's be intentional about how we can do this in a positive way that's fun for everyone. So the first one, F, it stands for fun, because it can be really scary sometimes. It can be very overwhelming and intimidating when you think about the education and having to handle everything. And if you look at our traditional model of education in the United States, there's a lot of red tape. And there are a lot of regulations and guidelines, and it has to be done this way. There is very much the right way of doing things, and it can be very overwhelming. So the first thing that we want to talk about is that education can be fun. This is an exciting thing. I believe very strongly in delight-led learning, because when you're excited about a topic, you learn a lot about it. You stay focused in, you're entranced, you're engulfed in it, and that can be done in so many different ways. But make sure that you add the fun in. When we have that mindset that school is drudgery and it's just something we have to muscle through, it not only, of course, creates a big dark cloud on a large portion of your day, but how many things do you remember that were forced memorization versus things that was something that you were really excited about doing? I mean, I've learned a ton just from us living and being out there, having the hands-on aspect of it, like we do in our travels. We call ourselves the field trip gypsies, because what are the most fun times of traditional school? A lot of times it's field trips and recess. And so we talk about how we go out and we do a field trip and we're exploring together and we're learning all kinds of fun things together. So keep it fun. We talk about, in the first episode of this season 5, I talk about Carol Dweck's growth mindset concept. And she talks about in there, even going back again to that checks and balances and testing and grading and things that happen in a traditional school setting. Carol talks about how to instill a growth mindset. You don't get an F, you get a not yet. Now, I have to give the caveat that this is not just everybody does wonderful all the time and nobody fails or anything like that or struggles. But what it is an F seems like a concrete, that's the end of it, you just didn't get it. Whereas a not yet says you always have the potential to learn more. And learning doesn't stop in 12th grade. And learning doesn't stop when you get your degree if you're going to college. Learning is an ongoing process. So anything that you struggle with, that your kid doesn't get right now, or that you don't get right now, it's not an F that is finite. It's not the end. It is a not yet for where you can, how can you grow? What can you learn from this? What does this make possible? So going on to the U. The U stands for unschooling. Unschooling. Hey, Ruthie. Hey, Jill. I'm just popping over every once in a while so I can see who's actually watching live as well. So the U stands for unschooling. Unschooling is specifically what we do. Now, unschooling can still have a ton of different titles, and you can be the radical unschooler, or you could be a road schooler, or a world schooler, or a wild schooler, a forest schooler, an unschooler, an unschooler. The list goes on and on. There are a ton of different titles that you can say. And I have to say that when it comes to the gazillion of different labels, it still boils down to what works for you and your family. That's like when you take the concept of religion, and you have here in the U.S., Christianity being a very popular religion. So if you have a Christian, say I'm a Christian, okay? So we're all learning together. I'm a Christian. And then you've got your denominations, and you're Southern Baptist, or you're Catholic, or you are Episcopal, or whatever you are. Okay, so does that mean that you are living and breathing the church and you lead every worship service? Or does that mean that you show up on Easter and that's it? It's really broad, right? So just saying that I'm Southern Baptist does not really tell me exactly what your lifestyle is and how you do it on a day-to-day basis. Same thing goes for homeschooling of any sort, or education of any sort. It is a personal process, and it's going to look a little different for every one of us. So for unschooling, one of the things that is really critical with this, and that is something that that I really focus in on with parents. I had the opportunity to talk about this at a full-time families rally I was at this past week. And I said that even more important than figuring out the how process of education is first establishing the relationship between you and your child. And so we talked about deschooling, and deschooling is taking away that whole agenda, the expectations for education or what it's supposed to look like, and kind of getting out of our minds of we should be doing it this way. I mean, a great example of this is socialization can be a big fear for people that are looking at alternative education. Well, how will my child be socialized? And I have a quote by Sal Khan, who's the founder of Khan Academy. He says, there's nothing natural about segregating kids by age. That isn't how families work. It isn't what the world looks like. And it runs counter to the way kids have learned and socialized for most of human history. As anyone who's ever spent time around children can tell you, both younger and older kids benefit when different ages mix. The older ones take responsibility for the younger ones. The younger ones look up to and emulate the older ones. Everyone seems to act more mature, and both younger and older rise to the occasion. Take away the mix of ages, and everybody loses something. So he really is a big advocate for that. And if you look in the rest of your life, when else in your life are you segregated only by, zip code and age? You are able to pick and choose. You don't. There's a lot more variety in life in general, and that's one of the beauties of having a homeschooling or something that's a little bit more of a non-traditional model, is the opportunity to be around children of all ages and people of all ages. That's something that a lot of homeschoolers get is, wow, you can talk to an adult. We say, yeah, they can. They can talk to anybody because they're around all different ages. And I do have a link for socialization. I think Sheila just shared it. Yes, thank you, Sheila. So that is, it's great having just being able to let go of that and seeing the beauty and how people can how kids socialize in so many different ways. So letting go of expectations I didn't realize I even had has been the hardest part of unschooling for me. And that was Jill. Man, I completely feel you on that. It's hard. There are times even where now, we're out and about, we're running around doing all kinds of things. And then all of a sudden we have a week where it's kind of rainy and cold. And I start obsessing, honey, they're just watching TV. Like, how are we really learning anything right now? And I'll start thinking in my head, this agenda, like I have to have this organized, structured idea of something all the time. And I mean, we all go through those times of second guessing, partly because this is new terrain. This is new terrain for us. We're learning and exploring with our kids. And also partly because it's very different from potentially the models that we grew up with. I did public, private, homeschool, group classes. I did the whole gamut of school. So I did get the sampler platter, which is great to be able to have experience in the different settings. And I know very much how the public school was for me as an elementary school student, because I was in public school then. I shared about the first time I got my pink slip in the podcast this week. Nathan and I both did. I think he won with the funniest story, but still, you'll have to check out the podcast for that one. So moving on, I want to make sure I get all of this. So one of the last things on this one was don't create a world of limiting beliefs. So don't limit what is possible or where it is that you may be able to go out and do stuff. I mean, think of the resources available in your community. You have libraries, museums, historical sites, courthouses, specialty shops, nature centers. You have adults who may be able to share a skill or answer a question. Allow your children to observe or help them at work. Think of real life activities like writing letters, handling money, measuring, observing the stars, talking to older people. These are all ways that some homeschoolers are learning their writing, their math, their science, and their history. It's not being boxed in. And that was all taken from John Holt's book, Learning All the Time. So you want to reframe your thinking around it, define what learning really looks like for you and lay out those expectations and lose the lingo of these shoulds that you're carrying around with you. The next one is in. This is for not a quitter. I don't want to say let your kids fail, because failure has such a negative connotation for me. It's not necessarily a failure, but let your kids struggle. Allow them to figure things out. Margaret Mead says children should be taught how to think, not what to think. And sometimes in our desire to help them from the struggle, we say, no, this is how you do it. This is how you do this task, or this is how you process this emotion. And sometimes we need to let them take a step back and let them figure it out. I just watched the movie Leap with the girls the other night on Netflix. And there's a scene in this movie where she is just desperate to become a ballerina. And she's supposed to jump up and ring a bell. She's in a puddle of water. She's supposed to jump up and ring a bell and not make the water splash. And it shows her essentially spending a whole day jumping up and splashing and everything. And her friend, this mother figure for her, is looking out the window and just watching her in her struggle. But she never went out. She never gave suggestions. She never gave an attaboy or just keep on going a little bit stronger. I have faith in you. Nothing. She allowed this girl to sit there and process through her desire for making it happen. And oh my gosh, that moment of triumph when she actually did land without making the water splash was a beautiful thing, and was that much greater to her because she tried so hard and she went through that process and the emotional ups and downs and the physical exhaustion and everything else on her own, without anybody else trying to prod her along with this. So, and just keep in mind, allow them to just be, allow them to process through. Don't let yourself be so focused on how your children should be that you miss out on how awesome they already are. All right, next goes credibility. I'm going to fly through these because I've got a lot and I still have a few questions I wanted to answer as well. So credibility, what qualifies you as a teacher or why you are a guide? I talk a lot about this in last week's podcast. We dive into this and I kind of like, so you've got teacher is our traditional concept of what we think we are. Acton Academy, which I love. I highly recommend the book Courage to Grow by Laura Sandifer. She's the founder of Acton Academy. And Acton Academy, I kind of say, is the private school for unschoolers. It is very much the unschooling model, but it's still in a setting where you take your child and you drop them off. But they don't have teachers. They have guides. And I love that. They foster a learning environment without a strict agenda on how it has to go. And what I talked about was even a step further, where it's not just a guide, but a lead explorer, because we can open up the door and explore together. And sometimes it's very much based on that Socratic method of just asking questions. And well, what are you doing next? What are you doing next? So listen to that podcast if you're really starting to question whether or not you're up for the challenge. Can you really teach your child? We spent a whole hour giving you the confidence to say, yes, you can. You already are. It's just a matter of focusing in on it and being aware of what you are already doing. Next is your thirst for knowledge. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Delight-led learning. It's allowing children to really get excited and focused on something. And this one goes along with the I, which is inspired learning. It's that ongoing process. And part of that is it's inspired by watching you. It is, I said a quote this week from Sydney Harris that says, the whole purpose of education is to turn mirrors into windows. We're going to have kids that are going to model our behavior. And they are looking to us as the example. And we also have the power to open the door for them to go even further on their own. So we aren't looking to just make little mini-me's, but we're looking to set the example for having a desire for learning and for us finding delight in it ourselves, so that they are inspired to then go and follow their own journey and take their own path with it. So, hey, Jared, hey, David, hey, Rhonda. Yes, the Acton Academy is the pinnacle of early childhood education. The community aspect is huge. Yes, and Acton is fabulous. I'm excited about working with Laura. We're going to be talking a lot more about what I can offer, even for the Acton parents, just with what we have with Mama Says Namaste. So I'm very excited to be developing some more resources for Acton families, especially. So, so going to that inspired and what was it? Thirst for knowledge and inspired learning. So I'm going to do just an example. I said in the podcast I was going to share this in the Facebook Live as well. So an example of this for Clara. This is exactly a version of how we've done unschooling in our house. She's 10 years old, and she decided that she wanted a betta fish, and that's about all she knew about it. And she said, I'd really love to get a betta fish, and you know, it's $5. Okay, we could, but I said, okay, well, why don't you do a report on it? She's like, what's a report? And I said, why don't you do a paper where you research and you learn about it? Well, I wasn't done with the sentence before she was running off to go get the iPad so that she could search about bettas. And since then, we now have a betta folder. And in this betta folder, we have things like 5 cool betta facts. We have pages and pages of information. Did you know that there are over 70 different species of betta fish? And of course, when she said betta means it's a genus, what's a genus? Well, oh my gosh, we ended up exploring all about taxonomy, and I laid it out. We went through the taxonomy for a Homo sapien, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. It was amazing how much I remembered from when I was a kid. And at that point, it was rote memorization. And at this point, it's real and it's exciting, and I'm sharing it with her. And we got so excited digging into it together. So, you know, she, of course, being my little artist and my researcher, she has just gone crazy with details and all kinds of information. And then she goes a step further, and she's already has her betta name ideas, and she's got all kinds of fun ones for that. And then she goes through, and I say, okay, what's it going to cost for all of this? Oh man, I don't know. I need to do my research. So she starts researching all of that, and she comes up with her list of all of the things that she needs to get, and she starts writing out what her cost is for everything. On top of that, she researched where she's wanting to go get them. She wrote down her hours, she got the phone number, and then she worked on a script to call, to ask. And it was great. We role played with her, you know, when an adult is super interested and excited to talk to a kid. And we also role played when somebody was very distracted and rude to her on the phone. So she experienced kind of what may happen, because now we're talking about her interacting with somebody else that we can't control whether that person's going to be friendly to her or not. So we talked about it, and we role played, and she called, and she researched, and she got the numbers, and she knows how much she's going to spend and what she's going to ask for her birthday. And we get to the point where she has asked everybody we know, do you have any questions about betta fish? And anytime they do, she'd go research, and she'd add it to her book, until we get to the point that she says, I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to ask. And so I said, well, don't you have other animals that you've decided are going to be in there with the betta fish? And so now we're on to Corydoras. You can't really see that page. There you go. Fun facts about Corydoras. And so now we're learning all about Corydora catfish. And we've gone down this whole spiral. I mean, the amount of math and sales and biology and science and research and reading and spelling and getting everything written out correctly. The amount of stuff that we've learned on one little topic of betta fish. Not only has this helped her with her schooling and things that we just need to know and we want to know, she's done it because she was inspired. She's excited about the topic. She knows so much about it that she also has a whole new level of responsibility and respect for what it is that she's taking on. And she's showing us that she's responsible now by taking care of the dog. And she's really just dug deep into really understanding the whole concept of it. So, I mean, that's just such a powerful way to take something that is a random interest and see how far your kid will go with it. Now, your kid may not spend weeks and countdowns and tons of research like Clara does, but it may be that it opens the door for something else. We just had a conversation with Ellie, who is 8 years old. She says still that she can't read. Now, she can. If we really sit down with her, she can sound out and she can read things, but she is not naturally reading on her own. And every few weeks we address it a little bit more, where she's interested, but she's not fully there, and she digs in her heels. And so we've given her space on this. Well, she loves movies. She loves to watch shows and movies. And the other day, Nathan and I were talking about how fun it is to read. And we did it. She was in earshot. It was not really with the intention of her eavesdropping, but she did. She eavesdropped, and we're sitting outside of the trailer, and all of a sudden we hear this little voice pipe up from the window where she was supposed to be sleeping. And she was like, "So you mean that you can really use your imagination with books?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, in a movie, it's concrete. This is what it looks like because you see the picture. But if you're reading a book, you can make the character look however you want, or you can go even bigger with the scene. I mean, it opens the door even more to imagination." And there's this long pause, and she goes, "Okay, I'm going to do everything I can to learn to read. I am going to read." And I mean, she was so motivated and encouraged to do it. And now she's pushing herself. She spent all morning this morning working with Nathan and reading, not guessing, but reading. So it's amazing how when they are really motivated themselves and excited about what doors it opens for them, how quickly they grasp things, and they grasp things very fast. It can seem very scary to hear, an 8-year-old who's still not reading. But Clara was not a fluent reader until she was 8 years old. And now that she's fine, she does not struggle with reading at all. And oftentimes the later they are in starting some things, the more maturity they have to be able to grasp it faster. So just because your child is behind on something doesn't necessarily mean that they're starting at the same level, because addressing something new at 5 or learning it at 8, you have a different level of thinking skills to be able to grasp it faster. So just that as a little bit of support for you guys as well. Now, I know I'm so close to that 30-minute mark, so I'm going to go through these fast and hit the question at the bottom. And then, of course, you can always come back and watch the rest of it too. The next one was own your attitude. And this is just really learning about who you are, what motivates you, what sets you off, and what works for your child. And I talk a lot about the lifelong learning snapshot. I sent out an email. If you are on my email list, you got an email from me yesterday about this. It is super thorough, like 48 pages thorough. You get a lot of information, and it's very in-depth, and it goes over your personality style, which I talk about a lot. It's the foundation of all of my coaching. Just really opening the door to awareness as to who you are. But on top of that, then it also has a part about your values, what values are very strong for you. And then it also has, what type of learner are you? Are you a visual, auditory, or kinesthetic, which most of you are probably aware of those ones. But then it has another part that I love that is about being thinker. And are you a literal, intuitive, theoretical, or experiential thinker? And it's really powerful. And this is exactly what our conversation was on the podcast for this week. So basically what we did is we really picked apart the lifelong learner snapshot and talked about those, little intuitive, so there's 7, I had to count there, for those 7 different learning styles. And we kind of talked about all of those and laid out some examples with all of those in there. So if you want to dig deeper, go into that. And of course, you can check out the lifelong learner snapshots. Sheila, there you go. There's the right link for the learner snapshot. So it's in there as well. You can see some sample pages in there. as far as what all is included in it. Now, I did have some people that had asked about that for their younger children. And I will say that, I mean, even at 10, it was pretty tedious for Clara to go through it. It's a lot of questions. And I sat with her and I went through the whole thing with her. And it is a lot of questions. So I would say it would be for more like 10 and up to take it. And I'd highly encourage you to take it as parents. See what kind of learner you are and how you process, and see how that relates to your child. It was it was very interesting for me to, you know, dealing with having Clara be an auditory learner, and I am not an auditory learner at all. So understanding that has really shifted the way that we have worked on things with her, like spelling. And I write things down and she doesn't spell it right. But then if I tell her to spell it out loud, she spells it out loud correctly. And that was just a huge aha moment for me that had a lot to do with what type of learning she does. So if you are feeling like you are butting heads, you're butting heads with your children on this process of trying to work on schooling of any sort, it may be that doing something like this would be a great first step for you. For those of you with younger kids, I would recommend, I've got a little $10 ebook that's called Family Snapshots, and it goes through the personality styles and gives you tips for motivation and communication for your kids, and is a basic assessment as well. That, and then there's also a little learner's profile that's a more simplified version that Juliet, my 5-year-old, took and blazed through with no issues. So those ones would be great ones to get started with. The lifelong learner one I would suggest for older kids. All right, the last one is notice the opportunity. And this is where, you know, opportunities to learn and grow are all around us. And we often learn more through interacting and playing with our surroundings. So look as to what's right under your nose to foster this. And we've gone over a lot of that already, so I'm going to leave that as it is. So now the last part is just adding in the questions. I wanted to answer, I have a question here, and I'm going to just get this one for now. Unless you have something else you want to add, you can add it in the comments section. But I wanted to answer a question from Jill. She had posted ahead of time. She said, my struggle is trying to juggle functional education with multiple children having different interests. Having 4 kids of my own, I find it sometimes challenging to follow each of their interests throughout the day or week while still managing to feed them and do all the other parent things. I'd love any ideas or tips. Can you relate? I'm sure that there are others that can completely relate with this. And I have to say, it all sounds well and good when you have one kid, or you have kids that are right at the same age range where you can focus in on a task together. But oh my gosh, especially you throw a toddler into the mix, and it is really difficult sometimes. And I know Jill, and Jill does have a toddler in the mix, and so it can be hard to focus in. So there are a few different aspects of this. The first one is being open to what things look like, and that it may be that that your day kind of takes a turn, and it's more about letting kids run around and be wild and crazy and not have as much of an agenda for a day. But the other flip side of it is, if you can kind of prepare in advance for what it is that you want to focus in on, you can create some separate activities for everyone. So and what I mean by that is, so like for cooking, so maybe you want to, the kids are all going to help with dinner. So you put each kid on a task based on their age appropriate level. So you can have something like having the 2-year-old wash all of the potatoes while you are working with the 10-year-old on cutting the potatoes, which I guarantee you a 2-year-old washing something in the sink can stretch out for a long period of time. So it is a fun way to kind of keep them distracted and focused while you can do something else. And so you can create an activity where you have a few different options based on their age level. The other thing, though, is having focus time with each kid. There are times where we really advocate for the screen as a babysitter. It can be a positive thing. There are documentaries, there are all kinds of short, educational videos, and then of course the educational apps are out the wazoo. So for us, there are a lot of times where we'll do that, where we have Juliet with headphones doing the Homer app that we love, and she's doing that so that, and Ellie's doing Khan Academy or Homer or Reading Eggs or one of her different programs. So they both have headphones on, are completely preoccupied, and they're doing something that's super educational and they're learning, but it's not just all on me to do. And that way then we can focus in on doing something with Clara where she's really needing some extra help or something like that. So, I mean, utilizing other resources can be really helpful, and do that where that's their, you know, that when you are focused on one kid, that's a special screen time opportunity for them. Or maybe that is when you sit all the kids down with Magna-Tiles and say, okay, you guys play with Magna-Tiles. I'm going to focus in on this kid, and I want you to build something. And when you come back, you tell me what it is you built. So giving them a project to do, of course, any kind of toys, but being very specific on a focused project. Think about when you, think about in the traditional school setting, you have one teacher and you may have 25, 30 kids in the room. She cannot be there for all people. And I think sometimes in homeschooling, this is something where we feel a lot of pressure to always be available and to work with everyone. And life doesn't work that way. I mean, they have to wait their turn. And this is an important life skill that they're going to need to learn anyway. So I'll do things where we set a timer. This is not my time with you. I am focused on one kid, and this is her time. You may go play. You may play outside. You know, when we were back at our house in Nashville, it was you may go and jump on a trampoline or something like that. So Jill, I'm answering your question now, so you'll have to do the replay afterward, and you will get to hear the full thing. Hello. So in this one, you can, yeah, look for something to, you could really focus in on one kid and look for other opportunities to allow your children to have some focused playtime in something else. So again, you know, screens or a specific toy, and you pull out one specific thing that you know will keep their attention for a longer amount of time. You may set a timer for only 10 minutes and do 10 minutes with each kid, but at least it helps not only for you to stay focused on one, but it also gives them a level of awareness that, wait, it doesn't all revolve around me, and I do have to make time for other people as well. And so they start learning about patience and waiting their turn and everything else. And again, you know, the level of what you have to do to direct their focus to keep them focused is going to lessen the older they get and the more independent that they get. The younger kids, it may be this is where you set aside those things you know are going to really, really take up their time and focus, like Play-Doh or Magna-Tiles or washing toys in the bathtub, or something that you know will keep them entertained for a while so that you can focus in on one kiddo. So, you know, this is a beautiful aspect of education where it is life balance. It is helping our children to not just be told everything or how to think, but it's teaching them how to be a critical thinker and to be a lifelong learner, and it's teaching them how to function in the world, how to be aware of what is going on. And when you foster that love of learning, they're very open to how they can learn from everyone. And that is just such a beautiful way of creating aware, you know, a next generation that is very aware. So lead by example, have fun, and get excited with your kids, and help them to, with love, to say, you know, the world doesn't revolve around you. You make a very powerful impact on everyone you meet, though. So let's look at how we can do this in a wonderful way and really celebrate how the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us. Thank you guys so much for being on the Facebook Live. I am sorry I went a little bit over, but I was thrilled to do this. Loved talking about functional education. And I have not actually decided what the Facebook Live is for next week. We had a few discussions about some different things, including dealing with religious literacy and spirituality, as well as potentially hitting any more of these education and unschooling topics. So if you have something you would love to see on Facebook Live and have some questions that you want to answer, please feel free to share them in either Mama Says Namaste group or the Unschooling Families group, and let me know what you want to hear more of, and we will keep these Facebook Lives going as well. Have a wonderful day. Namaste.